Michelle's kids up there?
So this is the way that it was last month.
That was last month. I got that. I got that right here. This one. Because he wants to know where was the one before we changed it.
One that came out of the charter.
But like, they were together. The one that we changed. They were together.
The actual ordinance.
Coming together.
I guess I was so you thought about it. Trying to get to step up and say, you gotta call out. We appreciate it. Call out. She lives in Tennessee. She has a house here. She has a house here. She could come back. She could do it. Okay. The other day I called because I'm not the president and I am trying to put space and let some things happen. I'm getting ready, the 28th Bear Conference, I'm going to be the minutes, they're up. And we're trying to get in a position where we're telling directors, let's hear early. We heard you speak. So you can speak. So we have to get directors.
Apologize for the delay. Welcome to the August the 6th, 2015 St. Tammany Parish Council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I am going to ask our newest council person to, I think our children are here, and one of them is going to lead the invocation, and the other one's going to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, we invite you to be with us at this meeting tonight. We especially ask that you bless each of these council representatives. Give them the ability to make wise decisions and be good leaders for the people they represent. Thank you for your continued blessings on our parish, our state, and our nation. Amen.
Please put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dean? Mr. Sharp? Here. Mr. Thompson? Turn me too far down. Mr. Faulkner? Here. Mr. Gould? Here. Mr. Groby? Here. Mr. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Canulet?
Here.
Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Stefanczyk? Here. Mr. Bender?
Here.
Ms. Blanchard? Present. Mr. Smith?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. I think we're going to move the presentations up before we go to the special items at the beginning. So the first presentation is a presentation by Ms. Brewster recognizing the St. Tammany Parish Government Employee of the Month.
As you know, Mr. Chairman and council members, we have in the last few months selected an Employee of the Month who go above and beyond, there you go, the call. And I want to tell you a little bit about this month's Employee of the Month. Mark has been with us quite a few years. And when we reorganized the Public Works Department, we called on Mark to step up and take a new role, and he did it wholeheartedly. And not only that, he went beyond. He was on committees to help us with our vision. He has been a great asset, and he just took on his new role so beautifully, and I wanted to thank you personally as we recognize you as the Employee of the Month. Mark Crawford has been a long time dedicated employee of St. Tammany Parish government for over 30 years with the Department of Public Works, first as a tractor and equipment operator and working his way up the Public Works ranks to Field Operations Manager. And whereas Mark Crawford is well respected by his superiors and his peers, has become a true leader and problem solver. It is an overall outstanding and exemplary employee. And whereas Mark Crawford has been instrumental in the reorganization of the Public Works Department, and whereas Mark Crawford exemplifies dedication, integrity, and commitment in all he does for St. Tammany Parish. Now, therefore, I, Patricia Brister, President of St. Tammany, do hereby recognize the hard work and accomplishments of Mark Crawford as our Employee of the Month for August. And I would encourage all employees of St. Tammany Parish to thank him for his contributions and commitment, and in witness thereof, I do sign this. Mark, thank you for all you do for us, for all the years. All the council members are happy to see it.
Oh, come on.
Let him take a picture, and then you're going to speak. If you'd like to say something, we'd love for you to. With my stuff, thank you, Mark.
I just want to say thanks. I really appreciate this. I mean, I know how many good people we have working for us, so to be named Employee of the Month is something I don't take lightly. And I appreciate the administration giving me their support, and stay committed. You know, like I said, I try to do the best I can.
And you do very, very well. Thank you, Mark.
Thank y'all.
You want me to do the next?
Yes, ma'am, please.
We have some officers with us from World War II anniversary. I think we got it there, John. I was calling for everybody to come up. Thanks. And who else? Who else do you want? Yeah, I know Pat. And I know Bill.
Gee, we don't get hugs.
No. This is thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, why don't you, if you want them to come up, okay? We'd like for them to come up too.
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, we're just going to introduce the three individuals over there.
Have them come up.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Gentlemen, you want to come up to the podium?
Yes. Here.
Members of the council, Mr. Chairman, President Brister. First we have here Bob Henderson. He was a staff sergeant, U.S. Army, joined the Army in 1943 immediately after graduating from high school. He was assigned to the 21st Armored Infantry Battalion, 11th Armored Division. During the Battle of the Bulge, served as a scout, and during a scouting mission, he was shot in the shoulder by a German soldier. Bob was hospitalized until discharged. Then we have Joe Foto. He was a staff sergeant, Army Air Corps, aerial gunner, 18 combat missions over Germany, Italy, and Poland. On his 13th mission, he bailed out over Yugoslavia and was MIA for 50 days, missing in action. He returned, and 5 months later, the war ended. He was again activated for the Korean War as Staff Sergeant and commissioned as Second Lieutenant. Then we have Lieutenant Colonel Chesty Petty. He entered active duty 1 July 43. He was with the 42nd Infantry Division, 7th Army. He was in France and Germany from 44 to 45 as an infantryman. 24th Infantry Division in Korea from 50 to 51 as a combat engineer, and the 19th Engineer Battalion in Vietnam from 65 to 66. He was a combat engineer there also. He was awarded the Combat Infantry Badge, Distinguished Unit Citation, Bronze Star with Cluster, other military awards and decorations. This is your greatest generation.
Well, with these wonderful people here with me, I do have a proclamation, and it is certainly my honor to be able to read this. Whereas August 14th, 2015 marks the 70th anniversary of the conclusion of World War II, and whereas over 16 million American service members worldwide served during the war, and whereas nearly 300,000 Americans gave their lives in battle, another 113,000 died in service, nearly 700,000 were wounded or disabled, and another 100,000 were held as prisoners of war by Japan and Germany. And whereas the formal signing that ended World War II took place on September 2nd, 1945 in Tokyo Bay aboard the battleship USS Missouri, and whereas the steadfast pride, bravery, and dedication of our American servicemen and women is unparalleled. Now, therefore, I, Patricia Brister, as President of St. Tammany Parish, do hereby remember, recognize, and truly honor the bravery and selfless contributions of all World War II veterans. And I encourage all citizens of St. Tammany to thank our World War II veterans in St. Tammany Parish and across the nation for their service and unwavering commitment to our great country. We can't say thank you enough to these wonderful people. Thank you. Very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Stay there.
Yes.
The next presentation is the honor of the St. Tammany resident and educator Kelly Stumps as the 2015 State of Louisiana Teacher of the Year. Ms. Brister.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I am indeed honored to introduce Kelly, and we are so proud as her recognition as the St. Tammany resident and educator, and as the 2015 State of Louisiana Teacher of the Year. And thank you so much for what you do for all of us and all our children particularly. And I know Mr. Gould had a lot to do with putting this on the agenda, and thank you for letting me be up here with her.
Well, you know, it speaks towards the school system. It seems like every year we have somebody up here to honor for being the best. And this just carries on, and thank you very much for everything you do for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank
May
you.
I speak a few
Yes,
words?
please. Please do.
Oh, thank you. I actually want to point out I'm really originally from Alabama, so I came to Louisiana. I know. I say I came to my senses and came to Louisiana for LSU. The music department brought me to LSU, and I stayed because I just fell in love with the culture, the people, the atmosphere, And as Mr. Gould said, there is a standard of excellence in this community with the school system that have been given so many opportunities that I don't know if I had gone to other school systems I would have been provided with. So I've been able to learn and grow from all these amazing teachers in this parish, and now I have this incredible opportunity to be an advocate for St. Tammany students and for the students of Louisiana as I travel the state and the country, and I cannot wait to share my message with everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I might add there were 60 nominations from different school districts, and we have the winner. Thank you.
All right, the fourth presentation is by Elise Nakari, Director of Compassionate Burials for Indigent Babies. Is she here? Come in.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that the audience understands, you know, in everybody's life, there's going to be a little bit of tragedy. And I was asked to attend a service for a child that it had to be the most heartbreaking service I've ever attended. The only thing could surpass that is possibly one of my own. The care, compassion that Lise has sent and her group is like none other I've ever seen, and I'd like her to explain all the service and the heartwarming support she has for the families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I'm going to be a little nervous. This is not my forte. But my name is Lise Nakari. I have a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 called CBIB, that's Compassionate Burial for Indigent Babies. CBIB's mission is to provide free funerals and burials for families who cannot afford them. We have buried babies who are aborted, abandoned, unclaimed, or thrown away in the trash. We believe in life. Like recently in Slidell, we buried a baby whose mother was pregnant and hid her pregnancy, even from her own mother. She delivered at home, and unfortunately, the baby did die, and it was found in the trash, by the trash. We believe in the sanctity of life. We believe that all life is precious and sacred. I know you do too. So this is special to us, and it's close to our heart, and we help promote the safe haven law that enables a child that if a mother does not want her baby, she can go to a hospital, a police station, or a fire station and give that baby away, no questions asked. This lady did not know about this. So I'm here today to ask you all to see what we can do as a community to raise awareness of this and make this more public. As you can see, we needed it in Slidell. We just needed it recently. I think it was in June that this baby passed away. So I just came here today. I thank you so much. Thank you, Jake, for coming to the funeral. I thank you for helping me you know, make some awareness to this cause. And, you know, also, well, we have, I'm going to put this in the back, we have our brochures, we have our phone numbers on it. We are a 501c3, so we do accept donations. I also have a fundraiser, and we have been doing this since 2003. So I'd like you to put me out of business. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation by the Slidell Little Theater, Mr. Grovey.
Thank you, Chair. I had the pleasure of meeting Fred and Miss Roberta when my grandson was in Billy No Buzz this summer. And the patience that that the Slidell Little Theater shows to a bunch of 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. It's like herding cats, and they managed to do it quite effectively. The little play was short. It had their hold and support, and I thought it would be a good idea that not many people in Parish kind of know about the Slidell Little Theater as maybe other popular venues, but this is an agency that you really ought to look up and support. You've got to see how they work. These kids really put their heart and feeling in. For that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fred to explain better.
Well, we'd like to thank you for inviting us here. It's quite an honor. 15 years ago, thereabouts, my wife took me, like a lot of men, kicking and screaming to a little metal building on Fremo. You're gonna have to excuse me. Over the years, she became very involved in our children's program, which is called YATS, Young Actors Theater. At the time, we were taking kids from 9 years old to graduating high school seniors to put on a series of plays that some of them were very small, but as they got older, they did full-blown musicals. They've done Les Mis, if you're familiar with theater. When my wife became involved with the YATS program, she recognized that there was nothing there for younger children. She invented what we call mini YATS, which is the program that Jake was speaking of. She realized that theater is the perfect environment for children to learn about life. They learn about themselves, they learn about each other. They come into a world filled with people that they don't know. It's new. They get to stand up like I'm doing here. I'm a little more comfortable now that I've been exposed to theater, in front of people by themselves and speak, which is a tremendous skill. They learn to be prepared, committed, responsible, how to remember to bring a pencil, how to be on time, how to remind your mom to get you there on time, all over a period of time that ends in a production. It's delay of gratification. They get no reward till they have an audience. She was committed to it. I'm sorry. So when we lost her in October, she passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly. We were approached by a lady who had been very active in our theater many years ago. She's currently residing in Russia. So she said, Fred, you need to get the theater to do a memorial fund for Fabian to fund opportunities for children to participate in the program who couldn't do it otherwise. So the theater took that advice and they have formed it. And I'm going to turn it over to Roberta, who's going to explain to you the business part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the theater established the Remember Fabian Fund, and the Remember Fabian Fund is to help, as Fred said, support children who may not have the financial opportunities to come to the program. The YATS program is the Young Actors Theater of Slidell, and it is sponsored through Slidell Little Theater. It reaches children from age 4 through graduating high school seniors. And we have the group split up according to their age, and they do shows, like Fred mentioned. So the Remember Fabian Fund is going to be a need-based tuition assistance into that program. Through the years in working with Fabian with YATS, she always was reaching out to the community, trying to find the child that really needed something that didn't fit in anywhere else and knew that they would fit in the theater area. And that has been proven true over and over again. And so because that was Fabian's drive, there is a committee of 4 people and Fred that are going to be monitoring and running this Remember Fabian Fund. And we are all, at one point in time, we were all part of the YATS program with Fabian, and we all had very different capacities in the program. So we got together and we decided that we were going to continue Fabian's vision. We plan to contact the Boys and Girls Club of St. Tammany Parish and the School Board Talented Program to get our participants into this scholarship program. We have decided to use as our criteria for need-based, we're going to piggyback on the St. Tammany Parish School Board free and reduced lunch program. So we're using that as our criteria for selecting the need-based aspect of the fund. And then the applicant will be asked, the parents will be asked to submit a short paragraph as to why they want their child part of the program. We're going to ask the student to provide a couple of sentences as to why they would like to be part of the program. And then so that we can get a better picture of the child as a whole, we're going to request a letter of recommendation from either the school, an adult from the school, faith-based community activities, or a community activity. So all that will come to the committee, and then we will decide who will be the recipient. We are shooting to give our first set of tuition assistance for the 2016 Summer Yachts program. And we are targeting to, or hoping to have 5 recipients of that award. As the years go on, and hopefully the fund will grow and grow and grow, we hope to be able to reach out to more and more children. But for right now, we thought 5 was a good number to start with. So that's where we're headed. We have an email address and a post office box, and I have a handout here that kind of gives an overview of the program and our contact information. If you know of anyone that you think would benefit from our program, please email us or send us a note so that we can reach out to them in January, when all the materials will go out for applying for the program. I want to thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
The email address is rememberingfabian@slidellittletheater.org, and Mary Poppins opens August 28th. Thank you very much.
That concludes our presentations. This time we'll go back to special items. Special items. And the first special item is being ordinance calendar number 5398AA, ordinance amending and reenacting the St. Tammany Parish Home Rule Charter, ordinance amending and reenacting the St. Tammany, subject to approval of the electorate by St. Tammany Parish and otherwise provided with respect thereto. All right, that's up. I know it's open for the discussion. I have cards. Our district attorney's here. Told him I would recognize him without filling out a yellow card. So Warren, if you want to come up and address the council, please do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to address you, and thank you for all the work that you do. And I really appreciate the hard work. Now that I'm also in public office, I have an appreciation, a great appreciation for what you go through and the sacrifices that you make, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank all of you also that earlier I had an opportunity to have lunch or have dinner with many of you and visit with you in an informal atmosphere, and I want to thank those of you who were able to make that so that we could establish a good working relationship. So I'm here this evening to talk about this amendment, a proposed amendment to the parish charter. And before I go into the details of the proposed amendment and my position on that amendment, I want to state that obviously the parish charter is the constitution, so to speak, of our parish. It is the fundamental and the most important rule or law that we have. And as a consequence, it's very, very important that we make the right decisions, that we make reasoned decisions, that we take our time. And those of you I know who served, I see Michelle and Richard and Steve and Tony Lamont here, and maybe some others who served on the Home Rule Charter. Remember the very lengthy discussions going into the night about what certain words meant and what certain phrases did mean, and how important it was to get the right language. And that's why I'm here this evening in opposition to the proposal, the proposed change, because it does not contain the right language. And I'm going to get into that. But before I talk about the right language or the wrong language that's in there, I also want to let you know that I, as the district attorney, and of course this proposal removes me from any representation of parish government. in the civil area. That's what it effectively does. I never received a copy of this proposal until today. That's when I received a copy of it. So I haven't had a chance to review it, to vet it, to analyze it, to determine what the consequences are of all that language, which is so fundamental going into our charter. I never received a copy of it, even though it pertains to my office and to my job, elected by the people, and even though I appeared before the Home Rule Charter and discussed, so people knew of my interest, obviously, I never received a copy of it. I checked my email, no one sent me a copy. And I find that unprofessional and unacceptable, because now I'll have to come here before you and oppose something that I haven't had an opportunity to analyze fully. Now, I understand that a member of my staff did receive it over the weekend. But you can imagine yourself, if you're being asked to vote on a proposal and you don't receive that proposal to the day of the hearing when you're asked to vote on it. That's the position I'm put in. So I want to say that I find that very unprofessional and unacceptable, and you would not accept it as members of the council. I also want to say, going into the details of it, not the details of it, rather, that this proposal that's before you is not the proposals that were voted on by the Charter Committee. And if you want to confirm that, you can ask Mr. Tanner, who I met with briefly before this. You can ask Mr. Lamont. I don't know if Michelle was also there, but this is not the identical proposal that they, Charter Commission, voted on for your approval. Now, you have the right, obviously, not only you have the obligation as members of the Parish Council to do what you think is the right thing. I'm not saying that you have to approve what that commission considered and voted on, but I do think it's important that you know that this proposal was not voted on nor specifically considered by that Charter Commission. So in a little bit, I want to suggest that you're in a little bit of uncharted territory when it comes to understanding what this proposal does in its totality. And as you know, oftentimes people pass rules and laws, and now we're talking about the parish charter, and there are unintended consequences, and litigation ensues, and things that we didn't mean to happen result from that law. And I want to suggest to you that if you pass this, that's what's going to happen. And that's not good. That's not good for this council. That's not good for the district attorney, and it's not good for our community. So what this proposal does is it removes, among other things, among all the other things I just mentioned to you, it removes the district attorney from any civil representation, not only of parish government, the executive branch, which I understand and agree to. It removes me from the representation of this parish council and representing any legal, any board or commission, etc. Absolutely and completely. And let me tell you why I think that that's a bad idea. And I've looked at the other areas. First, let me say that the district attorney representing the parish council is far and away the most common legal representation of parishes throughout the state of Louisiana. 90%, maybe not 90, 80, 85% are what the other parishes have. This parish council, unlike some of the other, or many of the other, such as Jefferson Parish, Orleans Parish, and these other areas, this council has 14 part-time members who have differing, each one of you, have a different political ideology, influences, and you all share authority for the decisions that are made. Each of you make approximately $27,000, $28,000, and I agree that you're underpaid. But the point I want to make is that these others, such as Jefferson, they make 2.5 times what you make, and there are 7 members. Orleans, 3 times what you make, and there are 7 members. All of those other areas, all of those other groups that represent where the parish council represents itself and appoints its own attorney, so to speak, it's a full-time job for them, and I know it may be full-time for most of you, but many of you have other jobs and other commitments. They're paid much more, and they have much more staff, 5, 6, 7 people to oversee that work. Okay? You don't have that. We have that assistance. You don't have that assistance, and you don't have that support. And I could go on and, on about that, but most of those other areas have that. Have people who are full-time councilmen who can supervise all of that work. Okay? Well, you may say, well, Warren, why don't you represent then the hospitals or the school board? Because we're not all that different from the school board, for instance. They have a bunch of members. Well, the school board has, I think, well over 1,000, maybe several thousand employees. It's a much larger organization and a very large budget. Finally, the school board also has a specialized legal issues that come before them. And it's the same with the hospitals, very specialized. And that's why I took the district attorney's office out of the representation of the school board, because I didn't think I had value to add to that representation. And I thought it was better for the public, for the people, the taxpayer, that those people hire their own lawyers and that I get out of that business. What are the advantages of me representing the parish council? Well, first, accountability. If I give you bad legal advice, I'm responsible for that bad legal advice. If you have your own lawyer, that responsibility is shared among all of you. And there's no one person who's truly responsible for that legal advice. Secondly, independence. I am not obligated to any particular constituency. I'm obligated to the entire parish. Although I do receive funds from parish government, and the parish is obligated to fund my office appropriately, I don't have a direct connection where you set my salary, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm free to give you objective, independent advice, and that's what you want from a lawyer. That's what you want. You want a lawyer who's going to tell you what the law is, not necessarily what you want to hear. One of the dictums, and again, the lawyers who are in the audience, and Michelle, is one of the things that you do as a lawyer that's very valuable is sometimes you tell your client, no, you can't do that. And so you need someone who has that independence to be willing to tell you that and steer you in the right direction. Secondly, or thirdly, cost effectiveness is a matter of just fact. I'll run the largest law office on the North Shore. I have a staff of attorneys who we are already paying for as taxpayers. Those attorneys are at the disposal of the council to be used. If you end up going in a different direction, you're going to have more lawyers and more expenses than you would have using my office and my economies of scale. And I suggest to you that as a business practice, we want to control our cost and reduce them as opposed to increase them. While I recognize that there will be times where the parish council will need outside counsel to handle specific issues, specific matters, I believe that I and my staff have the expertise and the independence and the accountability to help you and guide you in selecting that outside counsel. I believe that that is what is in the best interest of the community. So that's why I'm here this evening, to tell you that I oppose this ordinance. I oppose it as a matter of principle. I don't think it's the best thing for our community. I oppose it as a matter of I have not had a chance to analyze this language, to understand what it fully means and the full repercussions. And I assure you that as legislators as you are, many times there are unintended consequences, and there will be unintended consequences as a result of approving this amendment. And so I ask you and urge you to oppose it and to vote it down. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about my position or about this proposal. And again, I thank you for your time.
Warren, I'd like to make one response right off the bat. You know, and I really don't feel like the unprofessionalism should have been the word that you used when you said you weren't notified. Because I have a copy of an email that was sent to Mr. Tony Lamont, who is your assistant, your chief deputy, or what, and it gives him exactly what was done at our last meeting, and this went to him on July the 13th with a copy of what we were going to be voting on at this meeting. So, hey, if you didn't get it, I can't help that, but we did send it to your office.
Okay, no one, again, and I'm happy to discuss that, and
well,
that may be a management thing. Richard, I would say if they were changing the law and you didn't get a copy, but they sent it to your staff member and you didn't get a copy to the day of, you would say, what the heck is going on here?
No, I'd get rid of my staff member.
Well, maybe I should get rid then of the staff members here who are assistant DAs, if that's what you think I should do, because they work for me too.
I understand. Discussion from the council?
Let me just say on that, I don't want to get into personnel issues and personalities and matters, but if we're going to push that point, I'm happy to respond.
No, we're not going to sit here and argue with you or discuss this, because this has been discussed for like 9 months now, and the ordinance is ready to be adopted and go to the people for a vote. So, you know, we understand your opposition to it. And it may not pass. I don't know, but that's a council decision here now, right?
That is your prerogative as the council. That's why I'm here visiting with you.
Mr. Bender.
Yes, sir.
Warren, we're not going to be addressing you, so you could have your seat.
Well, wait a second. I have a question of the district attorney.
Well, wait a minute. I want to get back and forth with a discussion amongst the DA now. If you got something to say about the ordinance, then you need to say it, but not, you know, asking questions back and forth to the DA or anybody else that comes up to the mic.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just say to you as the chair, okay? My only question was going to be a clarification of a statement that Mr. Montgomery made, okay, so that I can determine an educated vote on my part, okay?
Okay.
That's the only, I'm not trying to go into any back and forth, okay? I just have one simple question, okay? I wrote down everything you said, Mr. District Attorney. I appreciate it. My question is simply this. Is your opposition to however it was written, okay, is your opposition to not having authority over the civil side, okay, the civil division, for lack of a better phrase, okay? And how does that relate to your views on the appointment of what we need as council members on a day-to-day basis? It's just the fact that we need it. And that is our own attorneys working here at the parish council office to give us views. For example, this morning, I had to have one of our attorneys at a drainage district meeting with me, okay? That's not the civil side of the business. So just for my understanding, is your issue over authority over civil matters, or do you also want involvement in the choice of legal counsel for us?
Yeah, let me explain. My opposition to the proposal is really twofold. The first is that, as far as I know, this proposal is not in effect in any other jurisdiction in Louisiana, and correct me if Kelly, if this, you know, if this has been in effect somewhere, or Terry, as far as I know, it's not in effect in any other jurisdiction, any other county, any other state in the United States. Okay, so when you pass a law and you say, well, what's that law mean, and people start putting in the practice, I haven't had a chance to vet it, and really that's what I'm talking about, the law of unintended consequences. I'm not sure what this proposal does. I know what some people say it is supposed to do, but not everybody's going to agree on what it's supposed to do. So that's the first. That's the first objection. The second is that is a typical matter. There are legal issues that come before the council, and you guys need independent legal advice, good advice. And so I say the district attorney, which the taxpayers are already paying for, can provide that advice for your office, including attorneys here, attorneys assigned here. And where you need attorneys from outside that you will hire, only you will pay them, so to speak, but they have a specific expertise, I can give you the legal advice to steer you in the right direction and make sure you have some objective information about hiring that person. Ultimately, you decide who will be paid for that outside work, but you know that the person who is providing you and recommending those people to you doesn't have a specific legal agenda or some specific commitment to some law firm, etc. Okay, and that's what I'm going back to, the independence that I think you need in that legal advice, and I think I can do that for you. Not say me, my office and my staff, and that's what our charter has in effect. Does that answer your question?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, Jerry. I apologize if I didn't understand it.
And I don't mean that you weren't trying, okay? But I have to ask Warren for this simple issue. Forget about who is our legal counsel now, because we're talking about a change to the charter, no matter how the people vote, that goes well beyond everyone sitting here. It goes beyond you in district attorney, all the people in the audience, okay? And that's my issue. And back when I was chairman at one time, okay, we interviewed for a legal counsel, okay? And the previous district attorney wanted someone else to work every day at our office. Every day. This person was going to be working with all of us every single day. And that was, I mean, all I could tell you, Warren, is it was so crystal clear that that was not the right choice. I won't mention names, but I guarantee you it was not the right choice, okay? And it took a lot of talking to get past that. So my question is simply this. Civil, I understand your point, okay? Selection of legal representation just for the council, like Ms. Bristol with the parish president. Simply legal representation for us. Shouldn't we, if the people agree, shouldn't we have the final say on who gets hired?
I think I have an obligation. You know, who has the final word? That's what you're really asking. I think I have an obligation to provide you with good, competent legal representation, and it needs to be somebody that you like and accept and trust. Because if you don't like and accept and trust that person, you're not going to take their advice. So I need to provide someone to you that you respect. And I say like, and you know, I don't mean that just to be buddy-buddy, but somebody that you respect and you believe. And I'm not going to, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to foist anybody on this council, nor would anybody, as a manager of a law firm, send a lawyer over to a client who doesn't want that lawyer representing them. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that, and I won't do that. That's my answer. Now, I don't know.
No, Warren, I want to be clear. I take you at your word. That just wasn't the situation we were faced with. And I think that it showed this council, okay. And I think you understand the point I'm making.
I absolutely understand the point, and I can't apologize. It's a new day, and that's.
You said it well.
I want to work with you guys. We're going to have disagreements. I have disagreements with everybody, it seems like, and I try to work those disagreements out and do it in a respectful way. And so far, it's us working out, and that's the way I'll work with you guys.
Thank you.
That's what I was trying to communicate.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for the question, Jerry. I'm glad I could clarify that.
Yes, sir.
All right, Richard, can anybody else ask me a question?
Depends on how long it takes you to answer.
Okay, that's right. That's right. All right, if you don't have any questions, I'm fine, ladies and gentlemen.
Steve, is that your light?
Yes. Maureen yielded to me.
Just the fun.
Take the time. Warren, and I'll tell you, I drafted the language for this, as I think I've told you, and I've told Tony Lamont on the phone today, that we're voting on tonight. When we had the original thing over a month ago, it had two parts to it. As you know, there was a section called 4-03 and section -219. And section 2-19 dealt with council attorneys. Section 4-03 dealt with executive, the executive legal counsel. After after your objections and stuff, we went back and rewrote this thing and took out the part on council attorneys and struck it out totally. And I said after that meeting, so I called Don up here a while ago. I know after that meeting, I asked that your office get a copy of that right away. Now, I'll remind you, because I did call you, I called your office, and your office told me you were not available. And then I found out later why, and I'm not going to go into where your vacation was, but the point of it is we did send a copy to your first assistant, who would have been in charge when you left there. So, and normally I would think that anytime anybody's left in charge, that's the person who should get that to you. Now, if you didn't get it till today, and I didn't get a call from your first assistant until 4:30 today, and asked me about it and said, where did this language come from? I said, I wrote it. You and Kelly Rabelais? No, Kelly Rabelais didn't write it. No, Terry Hand didn't write it. We had your legal counsel sitting there to make sure that it was covering what the parish president wanted, was what, and I wanted to make certain that she agreed with it. That was the bottom line that we looked at. So the problem I have with doing this and postponing this or something, we promised the people, and all kinds of people have been here about wanting charter changes, and we've worked like heck to get this done. One of the problems we face is, when we looked at our timetable down the line, is that we thought this would all go on the October ballot. Had that been the case, we would have been able to postpone this another month and do something with it. For this to be voted upon this year at all, any of this stuff to be voted upon, if this ordinance is changed tonight, it becomes a major change to this ordinance. And if it becomes a major change, you can't pass it tonight. You have to reintroduce it, and it'll take us another month to pass it. As you know, our legal counsel, halfway through last month, said, wait a minute, you have to go to the State Bond Commission to get approval to change your charter. Now, we have never ever, in 15 years, tried to change the charter, so nobody had an understanding that we had to go to the State Bond Commission. That requirement now adds another month to us to do anything. So if this is the only piece of this that we voted on tonight, in November now, not October, but in November, it's pushed us back, is the pieces that we have here. If we don't pass it tonight, it don't get voted upon. I think that, you know, to me, and I know you and I have had agreements and disagreements, and we're going to have more of them, one way, both of them probably throughout your tenure, or maybe whatever tenure I have left. But I mean, I think we need to go forth with this. I think I've written it so that there may be some issues, there may be some things come up, but I believe that everything can be worked out, and I think we will work it out. And I think, you know, and I'm going to tell you, I think you're doing a good job, and I'll tell you up front, I've told you before, I think you got some good staff. I'm working with some of them. I think you've done a good job of running the DA, but you may not be here more than 3 more years. And the next person may or may not have the same feelings that you have. 6 years, I'm sorry.
That's all right. If somebody gives me a raise somewhere else, I can be convinced, but I'm not. Anyway, I understand,
and that's
Steve.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, that's the issue I'm looking at is down the line, you know, the difference is, I mean, we've had our share of problems before, and we've managed to deal with them and work through them and everything else, which we would do again if we had to. But as Jerry had said, sometimes that gets pretty bad. Sometimes that got pretty bad dealing with it, and the next DA, whoever that is, may be in the same boat. So I'm, you know, to me, I think the council needs to have some autonomy, and we're looking at that. And I think we need to work with the DA's office, and we'll look at that. I'm certain that this council isn't just going to walk away from everything. But our parish president has long said she wants her own legal counsel, and I understand that, and understand the difference between us and them, and where we're going. So,
and let me just say, because I think I said it.
And you agreed to that.
Yeah, I did agree. I think I said in a letter that I sent to everyone that I agree that the parish president should have her own legal counsel, but I don't believe that that's in the best interest of the parish council, and that's what this amendment does, is give it all, really, to the parish president, and the word DA is not found in there anywhere. And so the
no,
interpretation.
it does not give it all to it does not give it all to the parish president. That's where maybe you haven't had time to study the stuff, but I certainly, I drafted this so that I was very specific that didn't happen. And she knows I was very specific that didn't happen, because I want the autonomy between the council and the administration. And I addressed that in here. I didn't use parish government as a word in here very often. I used parish administration. I used council, so that when you read that, you'll understand there's a big difference in what's written here. Now, we may have our disagreements on what comes out of this, but I certainly made certain in drafting this, and they know that, and they concur, and I don't want to put your staff today on the spot, but they took it to Pat. Pat's shaking her head. She did concur with this, and that's where we are. So, you know, I believe that we've got to pass this tonight to get it before the people. If we don't, this ordinance gets held up, and we'll be voting on it next April or next November, or whenever it is that we can get it to the ballot. Much like I would tell you, the term limits thing is going to come up on our next agenda, is not going to be able to be passed tonight or anything, and so therefore it gets put off for a year. Now on that one, it doesn't make a difference, because the implementation time would be different. It couldn't take effect before 2020 anyhow. No matter what, it couldn't take effect before 2020. These things,
let's talk about this when we.
These things can take effect, and this one will take effect, you know, once this is passed and at the beginning of the year. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, Warren.
Anybody else? Marty?
Mr. Chairman, I want to move on the ordinance.
You move on the ordinance?
Move on the ordinance.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Canulet.
I believe
we got other people that
Ms.
want.
Blanchard had her light on too. No? Okay.
We do have a number of cards, though, that I'd like to give people a chance to speak on the ordinance. And the first one I have is Carlo Hernandez. Carlo?
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to point out that this ordinance is the only ordinance or resolution on the published agenda that is not online. I attended the Home Rule Charter Committee and Council meetings, and I believe I am familiar with these proposals. I was one individual who requested a Parish Council term limits proposal, and the Parish Council only had 3 council members voting in favor of said proposal and 11 voting against term limits. I see a much different term limits ordinance later in the agenda, where one term limits doesn't begin until the year 2020.
Carla, we're not discussing the term limit ordinance. It's not a special item. It'll be ordinance number 1 on the regular agenda. So let's don't get into the term limit ordinance. This has got to do with the propositions that will be going on the ballot for the people to change the charter in November.
I believe most of the proposals in this ordinance are cosmetic in nature, and I plan to vote no or against all of the proposals until a legitimate term limits proposal is presented to the voters. I urge voters to do the same, and I urge persons who are supporters of term limits to submit their names next month as candidates for the Parish Council. Thank you.
I believe that's the only card that we have that actually wanted to speak on these special items. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those, please vote on the machine.
Motion passes 12 yeas, 1 nay. I'm sorry, 13 yeas, 1 nay. No one absent.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is special item on Resolution Council Series number C4388, which is a resolution that will be used to put that will actually go on the ballot at the November election, and there are propositions 1 through 9 there, and all of them refer back to the same things that are in the ordinance. Do I hear a motion or discussion? Second. Moved by Mr. Goose, second by Mr. Belisario. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, now we go to the consent calendar. And I have the items to pull, of course, is ordinance number 1, and that's the ordinance for introduction, and resolutions 13 and 14. So this ordinance is the one that refers to, I guess, just term limits, the term limit ordinance that is being introduced tonight. So I have a number of cards.
Mr. Chairman, give the list one more time, please, the ones you're pulling off the consent.
I haven't, oh, I'm going to go back to you and let you discuss.
I just didn't get them all.
That's right. Okay, let's go through this. I'm only pulling one ordinance for introduction and 2 ordinances in the two resolutions. Marty, do you have any?
Yeah, I have 2.
Wait, not you, Marty. Good Marty.
The
good Marty.
The good Marty. Okay.
Dennis.
Good Marty.
Dennis, you have anything? Mr. Thompson. Mr. Faulkner.
No, sir.
Mr. Goode.
Yeah, ordinance for introduction, number 16, and under resolutions, item number 2.
Mr. Canuet? No. Mr. Belisario?
Yes, sir. Under resolutions, on pull number 1, which is C4389, and number 3, resolution C4391, as we had done last Wednesday evening.
Ms. O'Brien? Mr. Sponte? Mr. Bender?
No, sir.
Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Smith? Okay. Now we're ready to go into discussion of the ordinances up for introduction concerning, the consent calendar. Motion been made and seconded on the consent calendar. Mr. Goo and Mr. Canulat. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
All right, ordinance calendar number 5430, better known as term limits. I have a number of cards. I'm going to call you and let you to speak on these. You have a 2-minute limit for each speaker, and once you get through speaking, the council will discuss it. And I have the first person is Mr. George Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm George Haas. I live at 6416 Lauren Drive, Slidell, Louisiana. I've been attending the council meetings, and all of a sudden, term limits is taken off because we, the voters, could not understand or could not have the capabilities of differentiating between term limits and not term limits. And basically, well, if you don't like us, vote us out of office. Well, it's the same thing of putting this on the agenda now, since it ain't going to be even up for vote until next year, maybe mid-spring or late fall, instead of in this popular election when the governor's race is running. You know, that to me is not fair to the voters. Another thing is you put 11 items on the Charter Review Committee recommended because, again, we the voters, 21 of them was just too many for us to handle. Well, you know, that's part of the process that we live under, a democracy where the voters can go to the polls and vote for what they want, or we can do a recall to remove the elected official that is not doing their job right. So happens this year, it's an election year. And I just think delaying this, it's the same thing what Mr. Montgomery said. If it's not passed tonight, you can't put it on the ballot. Well, then it might not get passed because the electorate will say, you're not listening to us. So is it better to listen to the electorate or just say, the heck with it, we'll take our chances and roll the dice? Personally, I'm voting against it. For term limits, I think it should have been put on the ballot on the original discussion, on the original part of the 21, and let the people, your constituents in this parish, say yes or no if they wanted term limits. Secondly, I understand that it's for 3 consecutive terms, vice 2. It needs to go to 2. I've always said this, a politician, excuse me, Steve, one thing real quick, a politician is not a gold watch project. You're an elected official, you serve the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Second person I have is Mr. Gary Leonard.
I won't take up a whole lot of time. Gary Leonard, 675 Kiskatom Lane, Mandeville.
I can't get it to shut off. I don't know what's going on.
I got a hammer in a car.
Well, that's what I need, I think, Gary. Sorry about that.
No problem. I'm going to let Mr. Franzo address this more extensively, but we all know our position on this, that we want term limits, and for a long time now, we've been pushing for it for years. I'm actually glad to see some other organizations finally getting on board to support term limits, because we've been fighting for it for
at least what, Rick, 4 or 5 years, I guess, at least. And we did an extensive poll, which polled over 92% positive for term limits in this parish. And regardless of how you feel on term limits, the real issue here is letting the voters decide. It's no more, no less. If this passes, term limits don't go into effect. It just gives the voters the right to decide whether we want term limits or not. And right now over 92%, and I'll let Mr. Smith address his poll as well, but our poll is over 92%. That means 9 out of 10 of your constituents want term limits and will vote for term limits. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. My name is Damian Roberts. I live at Mill Creek Road, Bush, Louisiana. And I also attended the Parish Council Review meeting, or Charter Review meetings. And I was astounded at the circular reasoning and the lack of logic and the self-motivated studies which supported the fact that term limits were not a good idea, including it took a while to get educated into the process of government, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and then others who said, well, there's some who may want to vote for somebody for 3 terms or 4 terms. And in order to ensure that right, we're going to deny the people the right to decide whether or not they want term limits. Go tell me how that makes any sense to anyone in this room, except for the people right in front of me, 11 out of 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donald Castillo.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. My name's Donald Castillo. I live at 82050 Beeler Road, Bush, Louisiana. I wrote down this short statement. I propose that the voters have the right to decide whether or not they would prefer to limit their council members to 2 4-year terms. Our first president limited himself to 2 terms. I believe in allowing voters to decide and vote on many issues that the parish faces, especially on larger issues like term limits on elected officials. Thanks for allowing me to speak on this, as the opportunity was denied me at the last council meeting. We want the government opened up to the citizens for their comments on issues of their concern, any issues of their concern. Thank you.
Mr. Franzo.
Good evening, Rick Franzo, Lacombe, Louisiana. I'm going to speak on behalf of Concerned Citizens St. Tammany. I want to go back 2 months ago when I believe we had an opportunity in this council chambers when the Home Rule Charter Committee teed up the ball and you guys took a swing and you hit it in the water. And I don't know what epiphany Mr. Dean had, and I thank you for bringing it forward. But now you have a mulligan and you have an opportunity to do the right thing. And again, I think Mr. Leonard's right, in fact, that it's not what you believe personally or what I believe personally, but you as elected officials who've been voted into office owe the citizens the right to make a decision on term limits. It's not your decision, it's the people in St. Tammany Parish's decision on term limits. So I strongly support term limits, but I more strongly support the citizens' right to vote for term limits. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Laura Leonard.
My name is Laura Leonard. I live in Quail Ridge on the east side of Slidell. I've been away, fortunately, twice this month, got away from the heat, blah, 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 but all that. And my husband, he wasn't with me, but he was saving the newspapers, and I was following the term limit, this whole term limit deal. And I have been mulling this over, but I have just, I'm going to narrow it down to one question, because you guys really have been beat up on. I'm starting to feel sorry for you, but not really. You bring it on yourself. But my question is, we had an appalling thing happen in May. You allowed to go to a vote for Recreation District 16, which we soundly trounced. Okay, at one of the meetings, Mr. Belisario, at one of the meetings, a man said, "How did you let this appalling thing get to a vote?" And Mr. Belisario said, we don't say, we have to do the will of the people. And that appalling thing went to a vote, but I'll repeat this again, we trounced it. Then in the newspaper when I came home, I read that this was a whole room full of people here who wanted a vote to go to the people for term limits, and the will of the people's not been done. Y'all said no. Now I understand Spandy Duran, it's going to happen here, maybe happen there, but why does it work both? Why doesn't it apply to all things, or am I just making it too simplistic? I'd like one of you to answer that. No? Okay, well, that says a lot. Thank you.
Mr. Charles Goodwin.
Good evening, Charles Goodwin, Mandeville. As you've already gotten a pretty heavy dose, it's really not so much for or against term limits, it's just for or against a person's right to vote. I think it's rather ironic, as my family says, coinky-dinky for a coincidence, that today is the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. If you trace the history of our right to vote, Maureen, if we hadn't amended the Constitution, you couldn't vote. Used to be you had to pay a poll tax. Before that, you had to be a property owner. We've had the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and it strikes me, I don't mean this to be inflammatory, that this council somehow thinks that it can, with the stroke of its pen, undo all the voting history in our nation. You're being terribly selective with that, and I think it's a disgrace and a disservice to the people who voted for you to cherry pick what you're going to let them vote on now. Thank you.
Mr. Randy Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Randy Smith, Slidell Police Chief, Slidell, Louisiana. I'm here to speak on the issue of term limits, and I strongly support those term limits. When I ran for office in 2010 for that position in the city of Slidell, I knew that I could only serve 2 terms. Just like our home rule charter in the city, our parish council and the mayor are subject to term limits, and we knew that taking office. Now, I do know that there are pros and cons to term limits. I understand that. But I believe term limits is what the people wants. I just completed a poll, parish-wide poll, and 88% of the people that I polled said they want term limits. And not just on a parish level, I'm talking about parish-wide level. I believe all elected officials in this parish should be subject to term limits. Thank you, and good luck on your vote.
Thank you, Randy. Margie Vicnair Prey.
I saw that look. If you want, I can talk on fracking.
I read it first. That wasn't going to happen.
Margie Vicnair Prey, Lacombe, Louisiana. First of all, I want to thank the people who had voted, Mr. Falconer and Mr. Groby and Ms. O'Brien, who voted for term limits last time to allow us a vote, or who voted to allow us to vote for term limits. And I hope that the rest of you realize that this is something that people are very passionate about and that we really care about and we really want to see happen. And if you want to represent the will of the people, you need to be considering this real seriously. That is a problem. I think the reason we need term limits, when you're in office for too long, and our founding fathers thought this as well, so it's not just something we've come up with in recent history. They said you should go represent your people from your area for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, and then you go back to doing what you used to do, because otherwise you lose touch with the people and you lose touch with what you're supposed to be doing and representing. And that is a problem, and it's a problem on this council. You have lost touch with what the people want and the people feel, and we need people in office who represent us, who represent the people. So please consider that in your votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the council? Do you have any discussion on from the council? Who is that your light, Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to clarify one point to everybody here. No matter whether whether we would have passed the term limits issued last month and put it on the ballot for November, it couldn't take effect before 2020 anyhow. There was no way to do that because some of the people up here would be elected before that issue were to pass and take effect. And you cannot change the term of office once a person is office. So whether it's voted on this year or next year really isn't going to matter. It can't, I mean, I'm going to tell you, it can't go into effect before 2020. And I think most people knew that, even if we had done it before. So that's where we are today. It could not have happened and gone into effect before 2020. So that's the reason why it says 2020 on it today, because that's when it had, I mean, we didn't want to put 2024 on there. That's one of the reasons why.
Mr. Bender?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to say, I live in the city of Slidell, and I'm actually happy that our police chief came up and spoke, because let me say this, and this is a big issue for me. The issues that we've had by and large, okay, in our parish have occurred at the parish-wide level. And we've gotten some good people in, okay? Mr. Montgomery was here tonight, Dr. Preston. It's been some unfortunate situations that have caused that to happen, but it has. I'm happy to hear Chief Smith say that he supports it parish-wide. I'm just going to say this. I'm glad it's coming up for a vote again, simply because I think we need to get away from this division, okay? I think that we need to get to the, for me personally, I just need to get away from this divisive thinking and get to what I like to do, which is just work for the day-to-day work of the people, which is what I think we all want to do. I think Mr. Montgomery wants to do. I think everybody wants to do. So if we can get rid of this division, glad that Mr. Dean brought it up again. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I hear a motion to introduce. Mr. Dean. Mr. Belisario, second. All right. Okay. Ordinance 16. Ordinance number 16 is up next. And that is an ordinance to amend the Parish Code of Ordinance to provide with respect to the placement of field within prohibited areas and within boundaries of gravity drainage district number 5. Mr. Goode.
Yes, sir. I need to supply a substitute ordinance. One line was left out in section 11, so I'm going to supply that substitute and move that it be introduced. Here's the copy. I think.
Okay. Any discussion on that ordinance? They have a motion by Mr. Goode, seconded by Mr. Belisario. I know. And so it's been introduced.
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. Yes, sir.
Do the folks know that regarding the term limits that it's going to be actually voted? I saw some confused looks that this was introduction.
This
and
for
that
introduction.
It will be voted on.
This is for introduction. It'll actually be voted on at the next council meeting. those of you who've come to a council meeting, you know ordinances have to lay over for a month. And so there was no chance of any action being taken on the term limit ordinance tonight. That's all of the ordinances that I have to pull. Now we need to pull resolution number 1, which is a resolution approved the holding of election in Parish Recreation District number 7 to authorize the renewal of special tax therein. Mr. Belisario, Mr. Fonzie. Any discussion? This is in my district, and I recommend that we do it. Hearing no discussion, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Resolution number 2 is a resolution approving the whole of an election in Parish Drainage District number 5. Mr. Goode.
Yes, sir. I believe we have an official from the Gravity Drainage District wants to come up and speak, explain this to the council, why they want to put it on the ballot. Thank you.
Council. I'm Pete Pearson, representing Gravity Drainage District 5. I'm putting forward a resolution to approve a holding of election to authorize the levy of a tax for the November 21st election. This would assist us in funding the efforts of the district. It's for a millage that will raise 0.5 mils. Which is approximately $150,000 to $180,000 a year to continue the work of the district. The district, if you're not familiar with it, enables the monitoring and protection of the floodplains within the district boundaries, as well as an independent third party to review new development, support of the partnerships of the 4 sub-drainage districts, helps with the recommendation, design, and implementation of the projects for infrastructure repairs, as well as the various regional ponds. District is led by a board of volunteers, unpaid, so it allows the money to go directly to the projects, engineering, surveying, land acquisition, and wetland mitigation. So it also assists the parish with the implementation of drainage projects. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have questions?
Mr. Pearson, you live in North Park, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, and you have been very giving of yourself, and there are multiple projects that are left on the table at this point. The funding from the bond millage is just about gone, and how many projects do you think that we have, or the district has on its plate that need to be addressed over the next decade?
So we have a series of projects with respect to regional pond recommendations in the areas of Hellenberg, North Park, Tanner Drive, Meyer Road, Salem Regional Pond. When you think about the subdivisions and the aging infrastructure, we're coming right up on the 10-year anniversary of Katrina. We all know how drainage is important to us. We have a lot of the prosperity that's come to this area and has allowed us to continue to grow and take up green space. And some of that is the aging infrastructure and some of the subdivisions. When you think about Phase 2 of Grand Terre, the Sergi Drive, Selmer Road, Marcy Estates, Kings Forest, Tammany Hill, Versailles, many of the subdivisions that could use the continued assistance of this drainage district.
No discussion.
Mr. Chairman, these people work very hard, and they give their life to it. The Gravity Drainage District 5 impacts District 7, 5, 2, and even a piece of, I believe, Mr. Dean's district. Informally, it used to impact Mr. Thompson's district, but that's been changed around. But the approach of the district's been very global, and it helps many people. And I think that I'd like to move on the resolution It's a good cause, and by the way, this will go to the voters in the fall, I believe, and they'll have an opportunity to make their own decision and determine their own destiny on this. So I have a motion.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Thank you.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Next resolution to pull is resolution number 3, Council Series number C4391, resolution approve the holding of an election in Parish Fire Protection District number 7 to authorize the levy of a special tax therein. Mr. Belisario, Mr. Fonzik, Mr. Belisario, any discussion? Is the Chief here? I think so. Please vote. No, Chief. Chief, you want to say anything? Gene.
Thank you, Council and Administration, for allowing me to speak. I'm going to be very short with this. This is only to renew something that we currently have. Right now, St. Tammany Fire District 7 is the second lowest revenue of any fire district in the parish. In the last year, we were able to reduce our rating from Property Insurance Association of Louisiana, which is saving our taxpayers money on their homeowners insurance or business insurance. And in looking at that, through the State Insurance Commission, it will save them up to 12% on their insurance rates. And that could mean for someone who has a $200,000 home that they could save them as much as $240. And the portion that they would pay to St. Tammany Fire District 7 for a year on this millage would amount to $148. So I feel that we have done our due diligence and given something to our community and helped them. So I ask that the council vote in approval for this renewal of our millage to just give us the same money that we've gotten over the last few years and continue the service that we give to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, two absent.
Next resolution is number 13, Council Series number C4401, resolution to concur or not to concur with Slidell annexation and rezoning of 2.419 acres from Parish NC4 to Slidell C2, Ward 8, District 4. Mr. Smith.
I move to postpone.
Here a second. Motion been made and seconded to postpone. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Next one is Council number 14, resolution, Council Series C4402, resolution to concur or not to concur with Slidell annexation and rezoning of 2.809 acres from Industrial 2 to Slidell M2, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, we move to postpone again.
Seconded by Mr. Canulat. Anybody have any discussion? Mr. Smith, any discussion? No? All right, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Appeals. Okay, we're ready to go into appeals. We have one appeal tonight. Carlo Hernandez appealing the zoning commission approval on July the 7th of a text change ordinance to amend the St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1, zoning to add on location, film, television, or film production as an administrative permit. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. This is a new administrative permit dealing with, as just stated, television or film productions that would apply to all zoning categories. I will read the first amendment which applies to all of them. On location television or film production where no sets/structures are being constructed that would require the issuance of a building permit, specifically structures must be of a temporary nature and not capable of being occupied under the International Building Code/International Residential Code as determined by the chief building official or assigns, period. Now, if everyone understands what that means, you know, it's interesting that if you look at the administrative permits, you will find a description in virtually all of them that has some limitations in them. This one, the only limitation is the word temporary, yet the word temporary is not defined. I would suggest that, you know, it could mean 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. Well, obviously someone is going to determine that. I would suggest that this council place as part of the ordinance a limitation on the word temporary, and by using the words up to 60 days following the word temporary nature. So you would have 60 days, presumably, of a temporary set structure that would not need a permit. The second one, it's interesting what they, and I'll read the second amendment. And this amendment applies, the first one applies to all zoning categories. The second one applies only to non-residential categories. So, and this is how it reads. On location, television, or film productions where any set structures requiring the issuance of a building permit as determined by the chief building official or assigns are permitted when the set/structure meets all applicable codes of the relevant zoning district. Okay, so if you need a permit, now the special permit, administrative permit, excuse me, will apply. Yet if it's under residential, what applies? You go through the normal process, so there obviously is a difference, and I would like it explained, hopefully. What is the difference between the normal procedure apparently applied with residential zones, and now this administrative permit for when a permit is required in non-residential zones? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But, you know, administrative permits, according to the 2014 annual report, there were 361 administrative permits issued, or approximately 1.5 administrative permits per workday. So there weren't that many. What I'm requesting and hopefully the administration will agree with this, that let the public know what these administrative permits are. The only way to know now is you'd have to make a request for this public notice request. And I think that the public should be allowed to know what administrative permits are being decided upon by the administration. So I would suggest placing the request online for 1 or 2 days, that it should take only 1 or 2 days to place them online, and then an additional 5 days to allow the public to make comments on the thing. If no comments are made, then they could issue this administrative permit within, you know, 7 days, and 1 or 2 days for it to be put online, 5 days for the public to look at it. And if the public does see some concern or question, then an additional 3 days, I would hope, would be considered then to address these concerns. Now, given that, so I'm looking at a minimum of 7 days to possibly 10 working days adding to the process. Whereas right now, you could go in today, I guess, and get an administrative permit within hours. And so I'm suggesting that let's go to 10 working days max on it, and then hope that the public will get the opportunity to review what's being done administratively regarding these permits. So I'm asking the Parish Council to make the change regarding the word temporary to add up to 60 days that would define that, and I would hope that you would give consideration to changing in the procedures. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions for Carlo. Did you participate?
Do we have, does the administration want to respond back?
I was going to bring that up, Richard. I was going to ask Sydney to walk through the process.
They have a, he's had 5 minutes or what have you now. They have the 5 minutes if they want him. That's what I was trying to offer them.
All that offer is the purpose of the amendment as it's written. Some of you may remember a specific situation where we had a television production wanted to come in. It did not meet the zoning ordinance. We had no mechanism by which to allow that use to go into that zoning district. So that is the sole purpose of this ordinance. The purpose of this ordinance is not to provide monitoring of filming, as was suggested at the zoning commission hearing, that we may want to get into that. We want to leave the monitoring of explosions to the state police. We want to leave the monitoring of traffic to the sheriff's department. What we have done is written an ordinance that allows us to allow an administrative permit that could have allowed that situation if it fell within the parameters of that filming of that particular television show. We also had a situation where recently we had a proposal for a movie where they would have built a temporary structure that would have been either dismantled immediately after or actually destroyed during the filming of the movie, and we had no method as which to allow that to happen, even though it would not have had an impact on anybody. So we were just addressing a administrative permit based upon whether it requires a building permit or not, whereby we would have a review and the ability to allow filming, which was a request, if you remember, a number of months ago by the Parish Council, that we do provide a solution.
Yeah, a couple. I was going to ask Sydney questions along those lines because I was thinking of the case that we had with Richard Teague several months ago, and we lost the ability of that because of our zoning classifications. Did you participate in the zoning commission hearings on this process?
Yes.
Did you bring these points up?
I brought some of the points up.
Okay. And what was the feedback?
Well, they went ahead and adopted it as proposed. So obviously, they didn't have some of the concerns that I've expressed.
Okay. My question is going to be, the second question is to Sydney, then I'm going to follow up for you. Why is there a differentiation between residential zoning classifications and commercial or industrial?
In a residential district, it is very unlikely a production company is going to come in and build a fully functioning house. They're going to build a set. They're going to put up a tent, okay, as in the situation that in Mr. Ortigue's district. They're going to put up a facade, as in the other movie that we talked to a production company about. Those do not require permits, or probably would not require permits. That's a decision that the chief building official would make in association with the state fire marshal. In that case, no building permit would be required, but we do the AP and make sure and have that mechanism in order to allow them to do that production. In the case of commercial, you could see a situation where a building was built that the owner would like to keep. And if that's the situation, they would have to comply with the underlying zoning. They could not put a heavy industrial building in a light commercial district because it's for a movie.
Right.
And that was the reason. If there's no permits are required for it, if it is a temporary building, no building permit would be required. They do the AP, they could do their set, they could do their facade inside in the commercial district.
All right, thanks for the explanation. The next one I'll just direct to you, if Carter wants to chime in, that's fine. What we are voting on, is this similar to what's in New Orleans?
Actually, looking at a lot of jurisdictions over the last year or two, there's very little regulation as far as zoning in any community that we found. We've talked to Shreveport, we've talked to New Orleans, it's generally handled by a specific department, and they kind of coordinate the sheriff's office and all those other entities in a very similar pattern that our Department of Culture, Recreation and Tourism, they're the contact. They put the production company in contact with the sheriff's office, state police, and whoever else is needed. They actually will run a question to us and say, is a permit needed for what they're doing? And we respond yes or no. The vast majority of cases, vast majority of productions in St. Tammany Parish do not involve the construction of anything. It's a lot of outdoor shots, car chases, that type of thing. Most of the a lot of the shots where you may have that kind of construction are done within the cities. In downtown Covington, they already have the buildings. They don't have to provide the sets. In Anabita Springs, Slidell. So we really don't have that many, but it's more of a coordination issue than it is a zoning issue in most communities.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Carla, you want to wrap it up? Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sidney, just a question. On my backup here on appeals, so this is why I'm asking this. I see all of the different districts and so forth, but I don't see the staff recommendation as it went to the zoning commission and that's fine.
Staff wrote it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Staff wrote it.
The staff wrote it?
Yeah.
No, I understand, but I wanted to see some wording in it, so here's my question, okay? In the case of, I don't have a problem with administrative permits because, I mean, I trust you. Let's just put it that way, okay? But in the case of residential television, okay, coming into a residential location or commercial location where it could disrupt someone's business, okay? Do you have it in your permitting process that takes into consideration not only a positive economic impact, okay? Because there's some doubt over how much good economic impact some of this has had, at least that's what I've been reading for the last couple of years, versus the disruption in a neighborhood or whatever. I mean, do you have in there the requirements to notify neighborhoods, to, make people in commercial areas aware of what's coming? If you could answer that.
No, we do not. We looked at that over the last year and a half that we've looked at this. That was a lot of what we were doing, trying to determine what level of, for lack of a better term, regulation we would look at as far as notification. If somebody's coming in to do a real-world type show in a neighborhood and they're going to film for 3 months, 4 months, and we didn't venture into that. If that's something that the council would like to do, it's something that could be examined, but it's a really hard thing to try and determine and establish. Again, having no real guidance, we'd be starting from ground up, from the ground up. Couldn't find anything where anybody was doing that type of regulation. People went into the communities and did the filming, and sometimes there was a ruckus created in the neighborhood. And I told the commission, it's cool for about the first 2 days when all the production trucks are out in front of your house, and after about a week it starts to get tired. And so I understand what you're talking about, but this was written with a very focused aspect of in those cases that we've been approached by in St. Tammany Parish, that we would have some method to accommodate the production companies in situations like this council faced with the eventual rezoning of that property, that was our concern when that first television show came. And they were going into an area that probably wouldn't be a problem. But if we allow that in that single-family residential, what's to stop us from allowing it in another one? So this is one of the options we came up with, is that we would allow this under these administrative permits. If the council wishes to look forward towards more regulation, looking at it, I suppose we could work with the council, legal counsel, and look at that, how we would handle that, and who would handle it, what staffing we would need, what limitations, what regulations we would have. It's a massive undertaking to write that kind of thing from the beginning.
Mr. Chairman, one follow-up question. Mr. Chairman? Okay. Sidney, I'm only speaking for myself if this would occur in my council district, okay? But if it could occur in mine, it could occur in anybody's. I think what I'm hearing from you is that this is the beginning of a process to allow us to be able to welcome this type of opportunity, let's say. Am I fairly accurate on that?
This is a freestanding ordinance. If the council would like to go further, I think it's something that the council could examine.
And that's the point I'm making. Is it seems like this is kind of in the infancy stage of letting them come in, and I see the parish president shaking her head yes. And the only thing I'm trying to say is not make it difficult, but perhaps try to expand it some to protect residential neighborhoods. Like you said, 2 days is fun, 5 days is a ruckus, okay? Well, that in itself says that we maybe ought to make sure that this is an ongoing process. Thank you.
And you're right. We're beginning this process. It's new for us. We're taking a step. But just, I think I would assure you, if something happened in your neighborhood or on your street, there are other ways to control the nuisance. Through law enforcement or some other way, so you're not just left out there right now bare until we get something on the books.
And if I may add, we did have one of our commissioners who had filming across the street, and she said the production companies do a lot of outreach to the neighborhoods. They don't want us to start imposing severe regulations on their ability to do what they need to do. So particularly the larger companies are very proactive in doing an outreach to the neighborhood and accommodating people and watching what kind of work they do.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any reason to complicate this issue any further. I'm gonna move to concur with the decision.
Motion by Mr. Goose, seconded by Mr. Canuet to concur with the zoning board and for approval. Discussion?
Mr. Tanner, if I could ask Mr. Funt, does the administration have any objection to putting a day limit on it? 60 days, 90 days?
It's only the classic that you say a week, they want 8 days. You say 60, they want 62, and we're being bureaucratic because we won't give them an extra 2 days.
So if we give them 60 days with an offer to appeal?
Yeah, and I think most 60 days would cover most shoots. I don't think that's unreasonable, with the understanding that somebody's going to come in here and they're going to hit some rain and they're going to want 65 days, and you know, and how do we handle that? And a lot of time that ends up being, you know.
Can they appeal it? Or
Can they
ask for an extension?
You know, maybe put something with extensions, or you know, and that may address some of your concerns, Mr. Bender, about them going in in a neighborhood for an extended period of time. You know, it's something that it's worth thinking about, but I think we've learned that anytime you put a line, somebody goes across that line.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, if you'll give us just a little time to look at that and come up with something else. I mean, it won't change the approval, but we can put further information in there that the council's mentioned tonight.
So do we table it? Do we just
No, you
concur
don't.
with one? Okay.
I mean, I think if you pass it,
Pass
we
it,
understand what you want, and we'll come back with you with some other stuff. We're not going to allow something that you've said you didn't want tonight.
Harlow, you understand where we at? I didn't say, did you agree? I said, do you understand where we're at?
I understand English, and I would just like to ask that consideration also be given to putting the information regarding administrative permits online. My request.
Sir.
Thank you.
Motion been made and seconded. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Can I have an ordinance for introduction, please? Mr. Gould, Mr. Canulet. Okay, ordinances for adoption. We got 127 of those. First one, ordinance is an ordinance to extend the 6-monthly moratorium on multifamily structures on property within the unincorporated area of Council District 12.
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Mr. Chair, have we been clocked? Our clock is not on the wall anymore.
Our clock is broke. And we haven't, we couldn't get a requisition through administration in time to get it. It's tied up in procurement. Don, where's our clock? All right, number 2, ordinance to authorize the parish president to acquire certain parcels, right-of-ways, and servitudes for Avon Court Drainage Improvement Project.
So moved.
Chairman, did we vote on the first one?
Yes, we did.
14 zip. Steve voted yes.
Who made the motion? Ms.
I did.
Bellisario, and who seconded? Mr. Canulet. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5421, ordinance to authorize the parish president to acquire certain parcels, rights-of-ways, and/or servitudes for Slidell Manor subdivision drainage improvement project.
So moved.
Mr. Savanzik. Second by Mr. Smith. Discussion. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5422, an ordinance to revoke a portion of Algiers Avenue right-of-way located in Central Park subdivision, Ward 8, District 12.
So moved.
Bender and Gould. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5423, ordinance establishing a no parking zone at a portion of Rio Street, Ward 9, District 12.
So moved.
Move that. Bellisario, seconded by Canulet. Bender and Bellisario. I thought that was further down than that. The B and B. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar 5424, ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory to remove Lou Lane, Ward 6, District 6. Motion by Mr. Goode, second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? So moved. Please vote. I'll give you.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar 5425, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 40,000 square feet from A3 to A3 and a mobile home overlay, Ward 6, District 6. Mr. Falconer and Mr. Thompson. I told you I was going to give you one. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar 5426, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 40,000 square feet. Is that the same one? No. Square feet from A3 to A3 MHO, Ward 6, District 6. Looks like the same one to me. Stefanczyk and Bender. Any discussion? Please vote. Y'all playing with me. I ain't fooling with y'all.
Mr. Smith? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar 5427, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify .37 acre from A3 to A3 and a mobile home overlay, Ward 9, District 12.
So moved.
Mr. Bender, Mr. Stefanczyk. I didn't know if you were stretching or if you were seconding it. Any discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry, please vote.
Mr. Thompson? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 10, ordinance calendar number 5428, ordinance to amend and reenact Chapter 18, Article 3 and 4 of the Parish Code of Ordinances relative to the St. Tammany Parish Planning Commission and Zoning Commission. Mr. Belisario.
Mr. Chair, I want to make a motion to postpone. I've had some council members who've had concerns with some of the issues and some citizens. And what I'd like to announce is I would like to have people, if they have specific items they want to address, is to send an email in to our legal counsel, Mike Savant, within the next week or so, because I want to form a little work group to go through and review all the changes. Thank you.
Mr. Mark, are you still here? Merrick, do you understand what we're saying? Yes, sir. Postponing, and we'll get in touch with you, or if you get in touch with us, we'll get your input for the new ordinance. All right, Mr. Savant, I'll have my email. Thanks. Carlo, you understand? Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
No, to postpone, right.
And that is coming up again at the agenda review.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes.
When are we postponing to?
Next meeting.
And this is going to be reintroduced at the next meeting, I assume.
That's correct.
Start off from there, okay.
Depending on how substantive the changes are, I think some of them might be, it may not. That's, we sit down and go through the document page by page, sentence by sentence.
I will send my comments, because I think this is, from an ordinance standpoint, I read through every one of those pages, and every page I had a lot of changes on.
That's why I want the comments.
That, to me, it's really needs to have a lot of scrutiny before we send this thing forward.
That's correct.
All right, we're voting on postponing. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar 5429, an ordinance to amend.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Molaire had a green card, and he wanted to speak about it? Yellow card. Okay, it's kind of a yellow-greenish. It's kind of green.
Who just sent, somebody just sent?
It was up there on the post thing over there.
Okay.
If he could.
Mr. Molaire, you need to speak, or?
Yes, I would, very sure.
Okay. And this is on ordinance calendar 5428?
Yes, it is.
The one we just postponed?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to make a quick, I'm Wayne Mollier, 531 Normandy Drive, in Folsom, Louisiana. Okay, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. Okay, and I think my comment is reference to process here. Okay, and it goes back to I think what some of Mr. Montgomery was talking about, transparency. I would really like for y'all to take a real good hard look at this. Okay, because when I go back to the July 9th and I took notes, council meeting. Okay, the statement was made, and I believe I hope I get right, Mr. Belsario. The statement was made that we would, discuss that ordinance, 5428, at the agenda review meeting, okay? So it moves on from introduction, okay, as it is, with no discussion because we said we're going to discuss it at the review meeting. So now it sits on the adoption, okay? And as you can tell, a lot of these adoption ordinances, they are flying through here. This is the fastest part of your meeting, but sometimes the most important part of your meeting, okay? Especially in reference to 5428, and I appreciate Mr. Stefansik's comments about questions, okay, and others. But I just look at the process here. It seems like to me during the introduction is when we should be having all the comments. At the agenda review meeting, I was there, and again, it was stated, let's postpone that, okay, and then tonight we postpone it, okay? So unless it has any significant changes, okay, it's still going to sit on the calendar for adoption, okay? To me, it should go all the way back to introduction after all this activity.
Well,
okay, just my comments.
Thank you, sir. And I agree with you, especially if it has substantial changes. When it comes through from the committee, it'll be reintroduced.
Right.
So it won't be up for adoption at the next meeting. It'll be introduced at the next meeting.
Okay. Well, I sure appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please vote. No, you're not putting postpone. Okay. The budget, ordinance budget. 215 operating budget, amendment number 6.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous. 1 absent.
Discussion and other matters. Number 1, motion to refer to zoning commission for recommendation to propose rezoning of 1.193 acres from NC4 and RO to HC2 and RO, Ward 3, District 3. Motion made and seconded. We have a card. Mr. Hernandez, how much money are we wasting?
I'm about to tell you, and is it a green card or a yellow card?
It's a yellow card.
In any case,
Go back.
what you're about to waive in fees, and it's good that you have the exact acreage on here. That makes it easy to calculate. $444.30. That's what you're about to waive, and I would suggest that maybe some of these funds could be used for purposes including fracking, opposition, and other events that this parish is interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
All right, we have items off the floor, items 1, 2, 3, and 4. Can we have a motion to remove all of them off the floor?
So moved.
Motion made and second, Mr. Stefanzik, Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Mr. Stefanzik.
Push the roll.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
This ordinance is for introduction. Ordinance authorizing the parish president to enter into a servitude agreement with Clico Power LLC for electric service to the Parish Communication Tower, Ward 3, District 3. Moved, made, and seconded to introduce. Red Thompson and Falconer. Number 2 is the ordinance to amend the 2015 operating budget, amendment number 8.
So moved.
Mr. Stefanczyk, Mr. Gould. That's for introduction. All right. Number 3. Do we vote? Oh, that's right. No, I have to vote. 3, resolution to amend ordinance council series number 143246 to make change to the capital improvement list parish-wide fund 300 and district road fund 301 through 314.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Number 4 is a resolution to acknowledge the authority of the parish president to execute an agreement with the Louisiana Department of Transportation for the signalization of the intersection of Highway 1088 with Forest Brook Boulevard, Ward 4, District 5. Mr. Goode.
I'll move on that, and then I'll have a comment after we get the second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Mr. Goode and then Mr. Groby. Discussion.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I represented the 1088 area for 8 years, and on my watch, we got an interstate interchange put in, and we also had a high school added, and it created some issues, and we knew it was going to create issues for the neighboring subdivisions in that area along 1088. We approached the state at that point during the planning stages of the interchange going in, and they didn't want to deal with it then. They wanted to be able to measure the impacts first and then try to address it. As time went on, and we saw what the impacts were, there were several subdivisions on both sides of the highway that were having troubles getting in and out. The state was approached to deal with this. They have come up with a long-term solution, and that's great. But one of the things that I was looking at when after I made my announcement that I wasn't going to run for re-election, what loose ends did I have left sitting out there that I felt like needed to be addressed before I left? And this was one of them. I approached Madam President to see if she could work the system to get us some kind of temporary relief. Efforts to do that during the course of the years since the interstate opened up were pretty well ignored. Madam President did so, and she worked on it, and then about 2 weeks ago the state came out with a plan, and that wasn't part of it. I felt pretty discouraged at that point, and then Madam President once again went to work on this thing and got it done with the help of Senator Donahue. I can't tell you how much this means to me personally, because it cleaned something up that occurred on my watch, but it means even more to the people who live along 1088. I think this is going to help every one of those subdivisions. It's going to create a break. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Mrs. Brister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the comments. And it has been a frustration for us because we know how bad the traffic's been. So I do want to thank Senator Donahue, who went to war for us again. And together we were able to put this together. And thank you, Mr. Gould, for staying on top of it as long as you did. And we're very happy. We are fast tracking it. Gina is working with the state to see how quickly we can get it up now that we have the permission to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Grover.
Thank you, Chair. I too want to thank the administration and Mr. Gould. I remember well the very first meeting we had with Senator Donahue, Paul Hollis, our staff. went to Baton Rouge, sat at DOTD's meeting with Ms. LaBosse, and pretty much begged and pleaded for them to give us a temporary relief. It's been 3 years, and like Mr. Gould said, they're just not moving on it. So I'm very happy that this agreement can be put in place until the long-term solution can be done. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Please vote.
Mr. Stefanczyk? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
I'd like to suspend the rules and adopt this tonight.
Doesn't have to, it's a resolution.
It's adopted. I hear a motion to adjourn. A second. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.